Okay, so we started adding fractions today, and we were several of us were unclear on what we were doing. So Miss Webster, we need to back up. We need to check for understanding and back up and make sure that we all understand how to find a common denominator, which will then enable us to add and subtract fractions, okay? So the first thing I want you to do is you will have 3 different sheets of colored paper. I only have white at home, so mine is white, but in a moment it'll be colored. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to stack them so that they are, and sorry, you'll have 2 sheets of paper. So you'll take them and fold them, spread them out where there's about 1 inch, and then fold them over so that you're making a little book that looks like this, okay? So again, you just need 2 sheets of paper. You're going to skip, and you can't see this because it's, so like this. You're going to pull one up so that there's about that much of a gap. And then you are going to fold them over so that it looks like that right there. So when you do that, you will get a book that looks like this, okay? So again, this was your 2 sheets of full paper. I spread them out and then I folded them over. And you're going to put 2 staples. Remember the green staplers on the cabinet. I want you to then just write finding common denominators on the front flap. Okay? Go down 1 and write just checking them out. Okay? So how can you find common denominators? By checking them out. The next row, I want you to write multiply the 2 denominators. And then the last one, I want you to write least common multiples. So pause the video right now and write those things on your foldable, and then we will come back together. All right, so now I want you to open this first door, and what we're going to write on here is how to just check out the fractions. So I'm going to move that like this. We're going to write up top, and then we're going to work some things out here. So we're writing on the top of our foldable right here what it means to just check out a fraction, okay? So you can write with pen, pencil, marker, whatever, as long as you're writing neat. So what I want you to write is check to see if the smaller denominator divides into the larger denominator. If so, if it does, if the smaller denominator will divide into the larger denominator equally, if so, use the larger denominator as your common denominator. I know that's kind of a big paragraph there, but if that makes sense, okay? It was all worth it. All right, so what would this look like mathematically? So pause the video if you need to write that because I'm going to move it where you can't see it. So pause the video if you need to finish that. All right, so let's check them out. So let's say I have 1/2, and I want to add it to 3/8. Forget about the adding. What we're focused on today is common denominators. There's a question you need to ask yourself. Does the smaller number, denominator, okay, first off, this is your numerator, and the bottom is your denominator. So does the smaller denominator divide evenly into the bigger denominator? Well, so does 2 divide evenly into 8? Well, 8 divided by 2 equals 4. So yes. So if it does, then 8, the larger denominator, is your common denominator. So if it's yes, the larger denominator is your common denominator. You have to know how to find common denominators or you can't add or subtract fractions. Denominator. Okay? So I'm going to make both of these, I'm going to turn them into new fractions where now they're both 8. Here is the part that gets confusing or frustrating, okay? Did I do anything to this 8 to make it 8? No, it was already 8. I didn't need to do anything. So therefore, I didn't times it by anything. I didn't do anything. So I'm just going to keep it. That fraction is going to keep. Okay, so then this 3 just goes up top here. Look at this one though. Did I do anything to this 2 to make it an 8? Well, yes, I did. And you've got to think multiplication, okay? Everything you're doing is either multiplying or dividing. I multiplied 2 times what to equal 8? Well, 2 times 4. And just looking at this fraction, the rule is what you do to the bottom of the fraction, you must do to the top. So when I multiply this by 4, I have to multiply this by 4. So 1 times 4 equals 4. So now 1/2, it's equal to 4/8. 3/8 is equal to 3/8. So I'm not even going to add them. I'm not even going to add them yet. We'll talk about that later. Right now, I want you to focus on, did you get the same bottom number? Yes, you did. And you figured out these, if I put a 1 up here, are these going to be, if I just put that 1 there, it's not equivalent. So I want to show you something real quick. So what I did, the fractions that we just talked about, I converted 1/2 to 4/8, right? What did I do to 2 to make it 8? I times it by 4. What did I do to the bottom? I must do to the top. So it becomes 4. The reason that this works, if I take those same 2 fractions right here, 1/2 is equal to 4/8. Guys, if I cross multiply them, it's going to give me the same number. 2 times 4 is 8. 8 times 1 is 8. That's how you know you did it correctly. Okay? So if you cross multiply, or if you come up with a new fraction and then you cross multiply those fractions and it doesn't give you the same number, you messed up somewhere. So the key is to make certain that the number that you write down, or when you got a common equivalent fraction by finding a common denominator, that you made sure that you picked the right numbers. So I'm going to make a mistake on purpose. Let's say I'm going to go back to that 1/2, and I said, oh, the common denominator is 8. I figured that part out, and then I just wrote 1 up here. Okay, well, 2 times 1 is 2, and 8 times 1 is 8. So that's not correct. So what I forgot is, oh, what I do to the bottom, I must do to the top, and this actually is a 4. And then 2 times 4 is 8, and 8 times 1 is 8. Okay, so making sure that I'm not making that mistake. So again, I would just now, because they have the same bottoms, I could add those top numbers, keep the bottom the same, and it would give me my answer. But I'm not worried about that today. I'm more worried about, can we find common denominators? So that's just checking your fractions to see if the bottom one can divide by the top one. Okay, if it can, then your higher numbers, if the lower number will divide by the higher number, if it can, the higher number is your common denominator. Okay, so that will work for some of your numbers. But what if it doesn't? What if that lower number does not divide evenly into the higher number? Then I got to have another method. So now I want you to flip your paper, and we're going to talk about multiplying the 2 denominators. If that method didn't work for you, you don't understand that method, you can always multiply the 2 bottom numbers to get a common denominator. So I want you to go to the top here, and you are going to write, so multiply the 2 denominators. So the rule is multiply the two denominators, and that should be an S on the end of that, together. Let me switch markers real quick. This is not working. Multiply the two denominators together. Use the product as your common denominator. Okay, so what is that going to look like? Let's take, so again, pause that if you need to write that, okay? And then you're here. Let's take 1/2 and let's say we are plussing it with 3/8. Okay, I cannot add these because the bottoms are different. So I have to find a common denominator, okay? So the way that I do that is I'm just going to multiply my denominators. So over here, 2 times 8 equals 16. So my common denominator is 16. So now, because I multiplied them, I can make both denominators 16. Okay, and I'm going to add them later. How did I turn the 8 into 16? What would I have to multiply or divide it by to turn it into 16? 8 times what equals 16? Well, 8 times 2 equals 16. So what I do to the bottom of my fraction, I must do to the top. So then 3 times 2 equals 6. So 3/8, and I'm going to come right up here and prove it. 3/8 is equal to 6/16, and I'm going to prove it by cross multiplying them. 8 times 6 is 48, and 16 times 3, well, 3 times 6 would give me 18, carry your 1. 3 times 1 is 3 plus 1 is 4. So it equals 48 on both sides. So this is done correctly. It's an equivalent fraction. Okay, let's go to the other one. What do I do to 2 to turn it into 16? What can I multiply it by to equal 16? Well, 2 times 8. And when I multiply the bottom by, I multiply the top by. What I do to the bottom, I do to the top. What I do to the top, I do to the bottom. So 1 times 8 is 8. How do I make sure that I put the right numbers? I can make sure these are equivalent fractions. So this side and this side, these are equivalent to each other. These are equivalent on each side of the plus or minus sign. So I'm going to take 1/2, and I'm just checking my work. Is that equal to 8/16? Well, 2 times 8 equals 16, and 16 times 1 equals 16, so it's the same number. So yes, this is correct. So now this whole problem goes away. This is my new problem, okay? So I know it looks overwhelming, but you're getting rid of this. Now all you're going to need to do is add your top numbers. Well, we are going to do that step. 8 plus 6 is going to give me 14. So it equals, I'm going to write that, 14 over 16. Here's an issue though. If you use this method, sometimes you're going to get a fraction that can be simplified or reduced. So this is the correct answer, but then I've got to reduce it. What number can I divide both of these by to simplify it? Well, I could divide it by 2 to simplify, and we'll talk about that more in depth. 14 divided by 2 is 7. 16 divided by 2 is 8. I can't reduce this anymore, so this would be my final answer. But if I don't know a common denominator, I could absolutely multiply them to get 1. And really, I could have used 8, right? Because 2 will divide by 8 2 divided by 8 is 4, so I could have made my common denominator 8. So this is another method that you could use. Okay, sometimes you'll have to simplify if you use this method. But if you understand this, where you just multiply the bottom numbers, find a common denominator, add them, and then simplify. And not all the time do you have to simplify. So this is another method that you could use. Okay? All right. Flip open to this last method for me. The last method is called find the LCM, which is least common multiple. Okay? So LCM, least common multiple. So that is the rule. Find the least common multiple LCM of the denominators, and that's a long word, by listing the multiples of each and circling the first one that is common in both. Period. Okay? Find the least common multiple, the LCM, of the denominators by listing the multiples of each and circling the first one that is common in both. So let's take, again, that same number, 1/2 plus 3/8. Okay? All right, I need to talk about the multiples of the 2. So the multiples of 2, I'm going to come right over here and do 2. Well, if I counted by 2s, what would it give me? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, and so on and so on and so on, right? Same thing is 2 times 1 is 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 4 is 8. 2 times 5 is 10. 2 times... So it's multiplying it or skip counting, right? Skip counting is multiples. So, and then I'm going to find, so this is this right here. These go together. This 2 is these multiples right there. All right. Now I'm going to find the multiples of the 8. Well, if I count by 8s or multiply, 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 3 is 24. 8 times 4 is 32, and so on and so on. 8 times 6 is, 8 times 5 is 40, and so on, okay? So now, this 8, these are their multiples, okay? I don't have to circle them. I'm just showing you what number goes with what. So I'm going to look at my multiples and find the number, the first number that pops up in both. Well, 2, no, there's no 2 here. 4, no, there's no 4 here. 6, no, there's no 6 here. 8, aha. 8 and 8 are in common. So because it was the first number they had in common, that is the common denominator or the least common multiple of both, the LCM. So now, do I have to do anything if I'm looking at just this fraction to convert? Do I have to do anything to 8 to make it 8? Do I have to multiply it by anything? No. So I just keep the 3. Look over here. What do I do with the 2? What did I do to 2 to turn it into 8? I multiplied it by what? Yes, 2 times 4. And what I do to the bottom, I must do to the top. So 1 times 4 is 4. Now I just simply add. Well, 4 plus 3, if I want to add, equals 7/8. Okay? So this, you can choose any of these 3 methods. Any of them. Check them out, see if it works. Multiply the 2 denominators, see if it works. Least common multiple, see if it works. But what I'm going to do tonight is I'm really going to focus on the LCM. okay? I'm going to do several problems on the least common multiple. All right, so we are going to look at, again, finding LCM, least common multiples, okay? We do that by putting the factors of the numbers. So just imagine that these are denominators of fractions. I don't care what fraction it is. You don't have to make a fraction out of it. But just imagine that those are the denominators of a fraction, and we are finding common multiples out of them, okay? So what are the factors of 3? Well, the multiples of 3. 3, so I go 3, 6, 9, 12, 15. I'm going to stop there, okay? And then I go 5, so 5, 10, 15, 20, okay? And I just list a couple. All right, so 3 is in 3 both of them? No. 6 in both of them? No. 9 in both of them? No. 12 in both of them? No. 15. Aha. So 15 and 15. So the common multiple, the least common multiple, would equal 15. So if that was a fraction, I would make that common denominator 15. Okay, let's look at common multiples of 2. I would write the number, okay, and I would skip count by 2s. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. I'm just listening until I can stop listing, okay? 6, well, 6. 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 4 is 24. It's the same as skip counting to multiply. 6 times 5 is 30. Okay, so I've listed several. And now I'm going to go through and find the common. 2, no. 4, no. 6, aha. So if I were finding a common denominator, it would be that one. Let's do another one. 8. Let's skip count by 8s. So 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 3 is 24. 8 times 4 is 32. Okay, let's go 6. 6 times 1 is 6. 6 times 2 is 12. 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 4 is 24. 6 times 5 is 30. So I'm going to stop there. Is 8 in both of them? No. 16 in both of them? No. 24 in both of them? Aha, that's the first number that is in both. So that would be my common denominator. Okay. 12. Well, 12 times 1 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. 12 times 3 is 36. 12 times 4 is 48. Okay, so listen just a few of them. And that's the same as skip counting as use your multiplication facts. Well, 8. 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 3 is 24. 8 times 4 is 32. 8 times 5 is 40. 8 times 6 is 48. Okay. 12, no. 24, no. 24, yes, sorry. So 24 would be my common multiple. And notice 48 is in both of them too, but the least common, the smallest number that both of them had was 24. So I want my common denominator to be 24. Okay. So now we're going to go over to finding common denominators. Okay. And you're just watching, and then I'm going to give you a task, okay? So I want to find the multiples of 4. So I'm going to start with 4. So I go 4, 8. Well, 4 times 1 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 3 is 12. 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times 5 is 20. Okay, and then I could do 24 and so on. 12. What are the multiples of 12? Well, 12 times 1 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. 12 times 3 is 36. Do you see one that's in both? 4, no. 8, no, but 12. So I'm going to make my common denominator 12. So both new bottom numbers are going to become 12. Did I have to do anything to this 12 to turn it into 12? No, so I'm going to keep the 3. I didn't need to do anything with it. But what did I have to do to this 4 to make it 12? 4 times what? Well, 4 times 3. What did I do to the bottom of its fraction? I must do to the top. 1 times 3 is 3. Then, depending on if I'm comparing them or am I adding them or am I subtracting? If I'm comparing, hey, these are equal, aren't they? And watch this. 4 times 3 is 12. 12 times 1 is 12. So these are equivalent fractions. Maybe the problem wants me to add them. Maybe it wants me to compare them. Maybe it wants me to subtract them. But I must have a common denominator, okay? Let's find a common denominator of these, and then we're going to move on. So 12, my multiples are 12, 24, 36, 48. And I'm just putting down a few. And again, I could multiply. 12 times 1 is 12. 12 times 2 is 24. 12 times 3 is 36. 12 times 4 is 48. 8. Well, 8 times 1 is 8. 8 times 2 is 16. 8 times 3 is 24. 8 times 4 is 32. Well, do I have a common? 12, no. 24, aha. So I would make my common denominator 24. What did I do to 12 to turn it into 24? I times it by 2. What did I do to the bottom? I must do to the top. 7 times 2 is 14. What did I do to 8 to turn it into 24? 8 times what? Well, 8 times 3. So what I do to the bottom? I do to the top. 5 times 3 is 15. So if I was comparing these, well, 15 is bigger than 14, right? And if they have the same denominator, yes, that one's bigger. Or I could cross multiply, right? And see which one is bigger. Or if I was adding, I would just add the top numbers. If I was subtracting, I would subtract them. Okay? So moving on from there, you will have a piece of paper like this, and I know it's going to be kind of odd. I'm also going to give you a dice. I know that I said I'm going to give you 2 dice, but I don't have enough dice for everyone in the class to have 2. So I'm going to give you, well, let me check tomorrow. If you have 2 dice, you're going to roll both of them, and the smaller number is going to be your numerator. The bottom number is going to be, the smaller number is going to be your numerator. The higher number is going to be your denominator. You're going to roll both of them again and make another fraction. So you're going to make the 2 fractions by rolling the dice. So let's pretend I rolled the dice, and this became, I rolled a 3 and a 5. Okay? I rolled my dice again, and I got a 1 and a 4. What Miss Webster wants you to do is use the least common multiple method, or if you have another method off the foldable we made earlier that you liked better, then you may use it. But if you don't, I want you to use the least common multiple. So what is the multiples of 5 and 4? Well, I'm going to put 5 right here and make its multiples. I'm going to count by 5s. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. Okay, I'm going to go to the next one. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. So what's the first number they have in common? Not 5, not 10, not 15, but 20. So my new denominator would be 20. And it so happens that if I would have multiplied 5 times 4, it would have given me 20 anyway. Okay? I cannot just write a 3 and a 1 up here. Those would not be equivalent fractions. I have to figure out what did I do to 5 to make it 20. I times it by 4. What I do to the bottom of the fraction, I must do to the top. So 4 times 3 equals 12 because you've got to keep it equivalent. What did I do to 4 to make it 20? I times it by 5. 4 times 5 is 20, and then I multiply the top by 5, so it gives me 5. And then I want you to simply add those together. 12 plus 5 equals 17 over 20. And that's going to be your answer, okay? So again, roll your dice. And if you only have 1 dice, just roll your 2 numbers and put the smaller number on the top, the higher number on the bottom. Roll it again. Smaller number, higher number, okay? So make your fractions. Make sure smaller numbers become in your numerator. And I want you to work these 10 problems, rolling your dice and practicing getting common denominators and then adding them. Okay, so once you're done with these 10 problems, you're going to turn this into the bucket with your name on the top, and then you may go to your fraction Quizlet.